we go. Another day, another video with my fantastic friend, Dr. Mike. Last week I made a bald mistake by saying the wrong name. I was thinking about his brother, Chris, where I went to his office, chiropractor's office. But here I am with Mike. Yes.
It's okay. I forgive you, Coach John. We kind of look alike. So.
Yes, we look alike.
We look more alike because I'm kind of bald too.
Ah.
Alrighty, so today we're talking about functional neurology and how that fits into the functional movement practice. So diving a little bit deeper into that, what sets us apart as human beings is that, as far as our brain, is that we can perform advanced, complex movements. So that's what really sets us apart. One of the big ways that sets us apart as human beings. And our brain is so complex because we can move in complex ways. Mm-hmm. So talking a little bit more about that, we were talking about sitting last week and how that's really a disease now. So that sitting culture, we are sitting all the time, and there's even a term out there called sedentary athlete, where that's someone who exercises for a half hour or an hour during the day, and they go and they sit at a desk job all day long and they don't move. So they're not activating those parts of their brain. So they're not getting that stimulation to their brain. So that kind of comes back to the functional neurology piece. When we're stiff and when we are not limber, we're not activating our brains. Okay?
Yes.
So if we lose that range of motion, we specialize. Again, we talked about specializing in a particular area of exercise. When we specialize, we get stuck in those isolated patterns. So we create we're activating the same parts of the brain. We're never activating new parts of the brain. Does this all make sense so far?
Oh, yes.
So I like to differentiate exercise versus movement. Exercise is something that, again, somebody's doing for a half hour to an hour during the day, or it's morning and it's evening, but it's not throughout the day. Movement is throughout the day. We were meant to move, and that's what movement is. Functional movement is moving throughout the day, and that's when we can actually activate more parts of our brain with the complexity of movement that we do, and we're just activating our brain more often because we're moving. So that's one of the best ways that we activate our brain is through movement. So I think when people say exercise, I think about neurological rehabilitation. That's part of their movement practice, is getting them out of exercising and into the movement practice, which is going to rehabilitate their neurology. Make sense?
Yes.
So try not to separate movement from the rest of your life. Try to constantly move throughout the day. We talked about if you're sitting at a desk job, get up every hour if you can and move. Walk down the hall, do a deep squat, hang, twist, lunge, do something, then you're activating more parts of the brain. Some research is actually showing that folks that do exercise, they do that 30 minutes or an hour during the day, are not any better off as far as their health as folks that move throughout the day, which is really interesting.
It's pretty scary, actually.
Isn't it? Another thing I think is to become more aware of your body. Okay, so if I just sat for 4 hours, how does my body feel? How do I feel now because I just sat for 4 hours? What's my body telling me? Sluggish for most people, yes. So last week we talked about the deep resting squat, okay, that basic resting human position. And when we are stuck in a chair all day long, that affects us. That affects not just our neurology, but also our back, our hamstrings, our legs. I think of that deep resting squat as a free chair, right? It's a free chair.
That's good. I like
and
that.
You think about little kids
Yes.
and how they play. They are always down here in this deep resting squat.
Yes.
And they're doing this and they're moving in the deep resting squat. So it's such an important position, and there's some research that's showing that in developing nations where they don't have chairs, or where they're in a deep squat for more periods of time throughout the day, they actually don't have low back pain because of those basic body mechanics. Again, that's a basic human resting position, that deep squat.
Wow. I didn't think
So,
about that.
isn't that interesting? And the other thing too is that the brain's turned on. The brain's turned on when I'm down there like that, in that deep resting squat. I have to balance myself.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm sitting here, I turn off so many parts of my brain because I don't have to do anything. So I'm in that deep resting squat, I activate more parts of my brain. And the other thing that I didn't talk about last week that I wanted to mention really quick is because when I'm down there, my knees, my thighs are up into my abdomen, I'm compressing the abdominal organs. Digestion can improve actually when we compress the abdominal organs like that throughout the day. So just something that I didn't mention last week that I wanted to mention. So coming back to the functional neurology piece, right? If another way to think of it is if I can't touch my toes, if I'm too stiff, I've lost that range of motion, right? That part of my brain, this part of my brain right here, if I can only go down to my shins and I can't touch my toes, this part of my brain, I lose. The frontal lobe, the frontal lobe is how it physically moves, how I physically move through that range of motion. The parietal lobe is how I feel the movement through that range of motion. So it starts to go away. If I don't use this range of motion, Physiology 101, if I don't use it, then I lose it. Exactly. So that's the functional neurology piece and how it fits into functional movement.
It's funny when you say if you don't use it, you lose it. And unfortunately, in today's society, people say, I'm getting older, and that's their excuses to not use it.
Yeah.
I'm about to be 50 years old. Watch and see where we're going to be.
You're exactly right, and that's I'm so glad you brought that up because that is always used as an excuse. There are people, elderly people, that do a functional movement practice that can move better than somebody in their 20s who sits for 8 hours a day at a desk.
Do you remember a guy named Jack LaLanne? Jack LaLanne was one of the first guys who came up with juicing. The big juicers, you put the things, you get the juice out, you drink the juice.
Yeah.
Well, for Jack LaLanne's 70th birthday, he swam the English Channel with his hands tied, towing some boats with 70 people in the boat.
What?
I'm like, dude. And I just saw a lady the other day who, at her 82nd birthday, she decided to go skydiving.
Yeah.
She was 96.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't use it, you lose it.
And you hear those things and you think, wow, those people are freaks, right? Anybody could do it. You could do it. Anybody could do it.
Yes.
As long as you do the practice. It's all about what are you practicing? What are you practicing as far as your movement?
And most important thing that he said, do. Don't try, do.
Mm-hmm.
Do means move.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just said practice. That's the same thing. Yeah, move, do it, practice. Different terminology for the same thing. Just the last point that I want to make is if, coming back to touching our toes, if those basic range of movement needs aren't met, if those basic needs aren't met, then I'm not activating those neurons in the brain that I need to form that movement. So, I mean, it just comes back to if you don't use it, you lose it, I think. But it's a form of neurodegeneration. If I don't touch my toes for, let's say, 5 to 10 years, then that part of my brain is going to start to atrophy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to lose those neurons because I'm not using that range of motion. I'm not using that movement. So I'm literally going to atrophy and lose those neurons. Now, can I get them back? Absolutely. That's part of the practice. If you start doing more complex movements, you can bring those neurons back. You can bring that range of movement back online. But it's all about, again, when we talked a lot about this last week and the week before, complexity. It's all about complexity and movement, stimulating those neurons. Movement is not it's not about your physical body, it's about your brain. And the best brain game actually is complex movement. Yep.
That's something to really think about it. If you can't control it, you can't develop it.
Yeah.
And if you look at a lot of people's, not sports, but the way they do things, they'll go out and just throw the ball or hit the ball or lift the weight, not controlling their body. And they'll wonder why, bam. Because, think about it, every injury occurs on rotation. When most people train, they train straight linear movements. Like I twisted my ankle, I sprained my knee, I torqued my back, I hurt my shoulder, I tore my rotator. It's all rotation.
When you're saying that, you make me think of CrossFit, right? They're doing these reps with this weight and they can't control it, right? It's a very jerking types of movements, right? And because they can't control through the entire range of motion, because they're doing a lot of jerking type of movements, because there's no control in the movement throughout the range of motion, a lot of injuries happen in CrossFit. My brother, the chiropractor, sees so many CrossFit people, unfortunately.
Well, here's something to think about too. They do a lot of range of motion, they do a lot of movements, but a lot of their movements is based on the Olympic movements. Like I've been studying a lot lately, Olympic lifters. These guys, like one of the guys, saw him go 500-pound snatch. And then I was watching his warm-up. He warmed up with the bar for a good 100 reps.
Yeah.
Just the bar. And he did it slowly. Concentrating on his movements. Yeah. Now, we're not saying anything bad about CrossFit or other people's training techniques or anything like that, but we don't want to see anybody get hurt.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to get hurt, and everybody needs to go to a chiropractor. This is something I like to say. When I used to work at a chiropractor a while ago, how did it go? He taught me this. A doctor will pay malpractice insurance of $120,000 to $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
Chiropractic insurance at that time was $1,900 a year. When he told me that, I'm like, dude, you're paying $500 more than me as a trainer? Really? Yeah. He said, think about it. Where's their higher liabilities? Like, okay. That's why from then on, we've been going to chiropractors, and now, thank God, I found his brother. And now I found him. Wait to see where we're going to be. We're working on some stuff here. We're going to revolutionize the industry, and not just fitness or nutrition or how the mind works or kinetic movement. All of them, because it all has to come together to be one. Thanks again, Doc.
Yeah, thank you. Next week, we're going to be talking about performance biofeedback. So, again, coming back to actually training the nervous system to improve performance.
I can't wait for that. Really can't wait. Something you got to always think about. If you can't control it, you can't develop it. If you can't control it, if you don't know what's moving on by biofeedback, how can you develop it? Look forward to you next time.
We'll see you guys.
Have a good one.